The American Freedom Radio Network proudly presents, live from Phoenix, Arizona, The Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here for topics you won't hear on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, Morgellons disease, and much more. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
It is a steamy Monday here, live from Phoenix, Arizona. I got to tell you, 110 degrees. I think they're trying to fry us. Well, for those of you who are interested in a couple of really, really big items that we've all had on the agenda for a while, one of them is we have a very special report from Rosalind Peterson, and she's going to be on in 2 seconds to give that report and call to action and an announcement. I know a lot of you have been writing in about this 5-year Navy program that is not cool, not okay, not right. And we don't like seeing the beautiful mammals of the ocean, such as the whales and the, dolphin and a number of other species pouring up onto the beach, or beaching themselves, I should say. There's a reason why those animals beach themselves, by the way. So Rosalind will be with us in just a second, and of course our guest following that will be reporter and journalist Bobby Powell. Yes, we're going to be addressing these explosions across the United States and in Canada. But Bobby has some special reports about that as well, and we'll be bringing him on shortly. But for now, I just want to really get right to it. Appreciate the listeners, appreciate your emails and your support. Absolutely fabulous. We just don't have any more that we can say than that. Thank you for joining us. Rosalind Peterson, are you with us?
Yes, I am. And hello, and thank you for having me on your show about this critical issue with the U.S. Navy.
You are so very welcome. Just go ahead and spin it off. Whatever you need, we back it up and get it out there for you, Rosalind, of course. Yes, of course.
What I want to tell everyone is that the U.S. Navy has 2 public comment periods which expire at midnight tomorrow. One is for the Pacific Ocean, and there's a public comment for the Atlantic Ocean. The U.S. Navy has decided that they are going to expand their 5-year warfare testing ranges, some smaller ones, into some massive-sized warfare ranges. This includes missile exercises, bomb blasts, sonar use, new weapon systems testing, drone experiments and testing. All of this is going to be engaged in over land areas and also in the Atlantic and the Pacific and the Gulf of Mexico. 11.7 million marine mammals and fish and our aquatic habitat of our oceans are in danger from these Navy weapon systems testing. U.S. Senators Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer, Senator, in other words, 7 other senators, Markley of Oregon, Wyden of Oregon, and others, sent a letter stating the following. In many regions, the Navy plans to increase the number of its exercises or expand the areas in which they may occur, and virtually every coastal state will be affected. Some exercises may occur in the nation's most biologically sensitive marine habitats, including national marine sanctuaries and breeding habitats, not only for the North Atlantic right whale, but for migrating whales in all ocean areas. That's the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Gulf of Mexico. In addition, and I quote, the Navy anticipates more than 2.3 million takes, significant disruptions in marine mammal foraging, breeding, and other essential behaviors per year, or 11.7 million takes over the course of a 5-year permit. Now, what's staggering about the Atlantic seaboard range expansion is that this expansion will cover the areas all the way from Maine down the entire Atlantic seaboard all the way to Florida and across the Gulf of Mexico, including shoreline and land areas. In addition, there's a huge expansion which is going to take a range now in operation from Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, and they're going to expand this range to include the Gulf of Alaska. This is a huge expansion. And in Southern California, they're going to expand the range for warfare testing all the way from Southern California down to the Mexican border, all the way across to the Hawaiian Islands. And there will be expansions in the Marianas Islands, also near Guam as well. All of this will affect marine mammals with sonar and these bomb blasts, 5,000-pound bombs, 1,000-pound bombs, toxic chemicals they can now dump overboard in many regions. We have a chance to demand U.S. Congressional Senate hearings, and the toll-free number to call your senator and or your U.S. House member is 866-220-0044. This is a toll-free number, 866-220-0044. It's a toll-free number. You can ask to speak to any congressman or senator because we desperately need U.S. Senate hearings to protect our national marine sanctuaries and our marine reserves, which in many areas the U.S. Navy is refusing to do. Now, don't be confused by the definition of take. It's defined under the Endangered Species Act as to harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, capture, or collect or attempt to engage in any such conduct. And when they're bombing, when they're using sonar and they're bombing during the blue whale, the gray whale migrations, the right whale habitat is near one of their warfare testing areas with sonar and other types of weapon systems, it's really important that everyone make a public comment before midnight, July 10th, 2010. And if you need to have the Navy website, you can go to my website, and it's agriculturedefensecoalition.org, and you can click on the U.S. Navy section. You'll find my letter there with the links, and you can file your public comments there, and you can also send copies to your elected officials of those public comments. We need to have a massive amount of people calling and working to stop this tremendous expansion of warfare testing. And this is live fire testing, everyone. This is not benign with bombs that don't go off. This is real weapons, real bombs, new weapon systems. And this is really important that everyone in the next 2 days start really contacting your elected officials. Ask for congressional hearings. Call your state governor, especially if you live in coastal states or not, and begin to say that we need to preserve our oceans and that in the name of war, the Navy should not be allowed to destroy our ocean environment for war practice.
This is astounding. This is alarming. Rosalind, thank you so much for giving us the heads up. I mean, my goodness. So I just posted this. I tweeted it, put it on Facebook. I'm asking the general public here to please, this is very important. The deadline is tomorrow, Tuesday, the 10th at midnight. Don't wait until tomorrow. Do it now. Please do it now. The number is toll free, 866-220-0044. You can speak, as Rosalind has just told us, to our Congress and senators, anybody. When people call in, they're going to want to know this. What do they say? What are they against right now? What are they going to say? Is there a law? Is there what is the phrase that people can use, Rosalind?
Okay, the Navy has a draft environmental impact statement online on their respective websites for both the Atlantic and the Pacific. And you can find them. The quickest way to find them is on my website by clicking on the U.S. Navy.
Okay.
and it's agriculturedefensecoalition.org. They can read at least the executive summary, and they can look at the maps so they know the extent of these ranges and how much the Navy wants to expand. They can call me at 707-485-7520 for more information, or they can email at info@californiaskywatch.com. And what they should say is that they want U.S. congressional hearings to protect our national marine sanctuaries, our marine reserves, our biologically sensitive areas, and 11.7 million marine mammals from sonar, weapons testing, and bomb blasts.
Okay. That pretty much spells it out, and people can just write this down. And again, just go to Rosalind's website if you want to look at it, agriculturedefensecoalition.org. Go under U.S. Navy and look at the executive summary if you like. Or you can call Rosalind at 707-485-7520. Or you can write her at info@californiaskywatch.com. And I would put in the subject line on that, Navy, U.S. Navy, so that Rosalind will go directly to that, because Rosalind does get a lot of mail, as we all do. Again, you want to stop this. 11.7 million marine mammals and habitats, life forms will be are in danger at this point. And this is the real deal, like Rosalind just said. Rosalind, this is live. This is happening. What is going on here? How are they able to do these terrible things? I don't understand.
Well, the Navy has taken the position that they don't have to protect most of our biologically sensitive areas, marine reserves, national marine sanctuaries, and that they conduct war practice everywhere. They have decided that instead of having, in other words, firing duds that don't, have these shock and awe explosions, they have decided that they need to do live fire testing everywhere. In other words, the Marianas Islands, the Hawaiian Islands, the Gulf of Mexico, all along the entire eastern seaboard, in Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, coastal areas, on land areas. They're going to have drones carrying weapons, which could accidentally fall on the ground, because Senator Levin has said that we're buying aircraft parts from China, and they're defective. 2 weeks ago, he announced this on the floor of the Senate. So we're in grave peril from these exercises, and also there's no need for the Navy to destroy every ocean area all around the continental United States and in the island areas where they're practicing now, and to expand this testing. There just is no reason for this.
Right. And
this
what's
is
with
hundreds? I'm talking about every year. Hundreds of 5,000-pound bomb blasts will occur, for example, in Northern California, Oregon, and Washington area along the coastal region. And so you've got 1,000-pound bombs, 5,000-pound bombs, missile exercises. In other words, below the surface blast, above the surface blast, and the Navy is relying on a mitigation measure straight out of the 17th century to protect marine mammals. And what that is they go up in a mast of a ship and they use binoculars and other things. And if they see some marine mammals, they say, well, then we won't do any exercises. But you can't see all the marine mammals and the corals and the sea turtles because you've got fog and clouds and gray water and waves and whitecaps. How are they going to see them? They're not. And my congressman, U.S. Congressman Thompson, got the information from U.S. Navy and National Oceanic and Atmospheric reports stating that the Navy mitigation measures is effective only 9% of the time.
Oh.
I put a cartoon on my website just to bring that home for people.
I see it. It's excellent. depiction. And I am posting, a lot of people are saying, I don't know what this is all about, so I'm trying to give them more information, and I've given them your website as well and everything else. The listeners know what, but the Twitter people and the Facebook people are saying what, but we're putting all the information as you're saying it out here now live.
Okay, if they go to my website, and under the cows at the top, they'll see U.S. Navy. If they click on U.S. Navy, they'll find an article I wrote, all the links that they need, the explanation of what's going on, the maps from the Navy. They'll find it all there, and they'll be able to go from there, click on the links or do a little reading, and they'll understand very quickly what's at stake here.
Sure. And I'm also going to I'm copy and pasting. I hope you don't mind.
No, that's great.
Okay, thanks. I'm copying and pasting all of this stuff right now, and why demand marine mammal protection from bomb blast, sonar, and live weapon testing in the Pacific Atlantic. I mean, at this point, people just need to make the call and say that and then read on later, because you're a very credible woman. It's not like you're coming out here, with your arms, jumping up and down saying, help, help. This is a real deal. You're very credible, and most people will, I believe, follow up with this, and I will work on this to make sure that people follow up with this. I'm making a point, too, and those on Facebook are probably now just starting to get on. They're starting to like the posts, which that's another crazy thing, like a dislike. But hopefully, I know Facebook just kills me anyway. But we could reach a lot of people. So we've got people liking the statuses now. So that means that probably means they're going to start calling. And then I told them to tune in. Some people don't know what. We have enough information. We've got the information. I've got everything on your website. What I will do as well is we will make sure to get this on our website on the front page. The phone number, make it real quick and easy for people to make that phone call. And, of course, when I get off the show, I'll make the phone call as well. Rosalind, thanks for coming on and letting us know about this. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, and I really appreciate it. And tell people they can call or they can email, put the Navy in the subject line. I'll send them my article.
All right. Sounds good. You're listening to the Truth Tonight Talk Radio. We've got a call for action, people. Do it. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the world's meeting place. American.
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes. I like very much.
Radio.
They're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
We've got a serious call to action, people, from Rosalind Peterson. And so those of you who are just tuning in, go ahead and look at our Facebook pages and Chemtrails Kill and all the rest of it. It's up there. People, this isn't a time to start asking a bunch of questions while we're live on the air. It's very easy. You call Washington, D.C. You call 1-866-220-0044. If you don't understand what you're talking about, it's a demand for marine mammal protection from the bomb blast that the U.S. Navy is doing. The U.S. Navy, Rosalind was just on. It's an emergency call to action. We have up till midnight tomorrow. All right. So I know that you're smarter than this, people. Some of you get it right off the bat who aren't even on listening to the show right now. And those of you who are listening, you just heard the whole thing. You don't really need to know anything more other than they're destroying this planet. All right. So if you want to talk to Rosalind about it, call her at 707-485-7520 or write her at info@californiaskywatch.com. Or just simply go to her website, which is agriculturedefensecoalition.org. Go under U.S. Navy. I've already posted it for you. And start reading if you need to know much more information than you think you do now. But I would say, being that she is a very credible woman, she just explained it all in a nutshell. I just go straight to the phone lines and call 1-866-220-0044. And at this point, I'm live on the air. And who knows, maybe I'll talk to the producer. Maybe we'll call live on the air. Maybe we'll call them live on the air so we can set an example for you. I don't want to take away from my guest, who's just fabulous. I've spoken to him on the phone a couple of times. He's a reporter and journalist. His name is Bobby Powell. Bobby, I'm just going to get you right on the show right now, and we can start talking to the people about some real important things. Bobby, welcome, and thanks for coming.
Well, thank you, Roxy. It's been my pleasure. How are you doing tonight?
Well, you can hear how I'm doing. I'm like already fired up.
I think everybody needs to get fired up because there's a poo storm coming, and we're about to be right in the middle of it. You know, I had to kind of laugh. I was looking at the ad on that was advertising, you know, this tonight's show, and it said Bobby Powell started his career as a editor for a weekly newspaper in Florida. Well, they only used the first sentence. See, I ended my career as a CBS investigative journalist and as the news anchor for KVOR in Colorado Springs. And I covered the military bases during Desert Storm. And that's where it all gets interesting, because what happened, for those of your listeners that don't have a clue as to who I am,
right.
On the 6th of June, there was a massive explosion that was felt in northeastern Michigan. If you take your hand, your left hand, and hold it out, you'll see basically the shape of Michigan. And the explosion occurred right at the tip of your forefinger. Now, a friend of mine works for a local radio station, and he posted on Facebook immediately, who else felt that explosion? And right away, he got dozens of replies. I mean, dozens and dozens from hundreds of miles away. From Presqu'île, which is 35 miles north of us, down to Ossineke, which is 65 miles south of us, and out to Hillman and Lachine, which is 50 miles to the west of us. People felt this explosion. And, you know, at first, I thought it might have been Lafarge, which is the largest cement company in the world. It's based here in Alpena. So the very first thing that I did was I called them. I said, were you doing any blasting at the quarry today? They said no. And then I went to the sheriff's department, and I spoke with Terry King. He's the undersheriff of Alpena County. And he stood face-to-face with me, not 2 feet away, and he told me that he was standing in the building when he felt the entire sheriff's department shake. So there is no doubt that this happened. They sent deputy sheriffs out to investigate. They could find no cause, no damage, no sign of an explosion whatsoever. So, you know, the next thing that occurred to me was maybe the Air Force was doing some blasting, or not blasting, but the plane had gone supersonic. So I called the Combat Readiness Training Center that's here in Alpena. It's a National Guard base at Alpena Airport, and asked them if they had, you know, any planes that had, you know, accidentally broken the sound barrier, and they right away said, no, we don't have any planes in the air at all. Okay. So I accepted that explanation. Now, this is still the 6th, and I went to NOAA, because, you know, I had posted on Facebook and various other venues that the explosion had occurred, and did anybody have any ideas what might have caused it? And one of the replies that I got back said that it might have been sinkholes. You know, the bay off of Alpena is called Thunder Bay, and you know, it could have been a natural phenomena. So I went to NOAA, which has an office up here, and they do various kinds of research, and I asked them, could sinkholes or another natural phenomena have caused this noise? And they said no. Okay, so I'm running out of places to go. Nobody seems to know what's going on. So now we come to the next day. It's the 7th, and I go to the radio station to interview my friend that had posted this on Facebook. And I leave his office, and I go to the Combat Readiness Training Center after calling them first, mind you, and told them that I was on my way, and I wanted to get the comments that had been left on my cell phone by the base's executive assistant on videotape for my show. And I pulled up to the gate. just like I had done at Fort Carson, at U.S. Space Command, Peterson Air Force Base, and NORAD. And I was told to park just around behind the guard shack, which was totally normal. That's the way it has always been. And I walked up to the guard shack to give them my ID, and the first thing I know, I'm in handcuffs surrounded by Air Force security and deputy sheriffs with M4s. Now,
what did you think when that happened?
Me and my big mouth.
Right.
Pretty much. Because, I've been talking about the National Defense Authorization Act and how lawless the federal government has become for over a year now, ever since the order to murder Anwar al-Awlaki was issued by President Obama. Mm-hmm. And, just last last December, Janet Napolitano said, they're going to be looking at journalists and bloggers and other, types of people that, quote, inform their audiences in real time. That means you too, Roxy. So, so I'm sitting there on my knees with my hands behind my back and guns pointed at my head. And I'm thinking, I knew better. I shouldn't have come here. Well, they eventually let me go after the Air Force eventually let me go. They asked me, who I was, what I was doing there. They knew exactly who I was and what I was doing there because I'd called them ahead of time. And they turned me over to the sheriff's department because it turns out that my license was suspended down in South Carolina. It was just a technical snafu. There's no alcohol, drugs, or tickets or anything like that. I had failed to pay my insurance in South Carolina, and as long as you have South Carolina plates, you're required to have South Carolina insurance. Well, I didn't know that. I moved to Michigan and got Michigan insurance.
But, let me interrupt you real quick. Sorry, Bobby. How did they know? Because you had everything current on the current car.
Right. That's exactly my point.
Sorry, did I jump the gun on that one? I'm so sorry.
No. That's very complimentary because you fed right into my point. They had no way to know unless they had checked it, previously, because I had not even given them my identification before I was slapped in handcuffs.
Jeez.
And so the weeks after that have been interesting, to say the least.
Well, yeah, no doubt. Hey, and what I was going to ask you, because you went right into the story, and we're going to discuss this a little bit more at length, these explosions, but why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? Why don't you let them know a little bit about your background? Just give me a couple of minutes on that so that everybody knows who you are.
Okay, sure. I went to Specs Howard School of Broadcast Arts in Detroit. I had been a DJ in nightclubs. But I've always been fascinated by news. I got my first subscription to U.S. News and World Report at 14 for my birthday because that's what I wanted.
Wow.
And, then I first job out of Specs Howard was, oddly enough, not in radio, but as the editor of a small weekly newspaper down in Florida. And the first story, other than Boy Scout spaghetti dinners, that really meant anything, almost got me an Associated Press award for Best Investigative Journalism because the local assistant district attorney by the name of Peter Neal had hidden exculpatory evidence that would have proven that a 17-year-old boy that he had sent to prison for 20 years was innocent. And so I dug into that story, and over the course of a year, it was picked up by the Miami Herald and Inside Edition and A Current Affair, and the boy was released. The assistant district attorney lost his job, and I've been chasing that dragon ever since. It just felt so good because, I did what I came to do. I told the truth, and justice was served. And from there, I moved up here to Alpena. And I was promised a job on air at the local television station, which still is the smallest network affiliate in the country. It used to be a CBS affiliate. It's a Fox affiliate now, I believe. But it's still the smallest. And I waited here for a year, slaving behind master control and producing commercials and directing the evening news and, just basically doing everything because, as I said, it's a very small station. And when the promised position never appeared, I headed out to Colorado because, I'd been there as a kid and I remembered how beautiful it was. And Colorado Springs had like 3 newspapers, 10 radio stations, 4 or 5 television stations. I had no doubt that I could get a job, and I did at KVOR. And I started off as their afternoon reporter, and eventually worked my way up to co-anchoring news with Jerry Evans. And Chuck Baker used to have a show that I co-hosted sometimes called On the Carpet.
Now, was that on the radio or was that on television?
Oh, that was KVOR radio.
Okay, radio. Gotcha. Okay.
1300 is the voice of the Rockies. Yeah, it was the Colorado Springs local talk radio station. Well,
and you say that this was out of Colorado. So were you, 10 floors under the ground?
Oh, no. But our studios were right at the base of Cheyenne Mountain, and so was my apartment.
Is that right? I was kidding around. Okay, so you were right by Cheyenne Mountain. Yeah,
I could step out on my porch and look up and see that gate that everybody's so familiar with from Stargate SG-1. It's just visible right there on the side of the mountain, and I could see it every day when I woke up and when I went to work. And my wife and I always used to kid around that if there ever was a nuclear war, we'd never know about it because there are enough nuclear warheads targeted on Cheyenne Mountain to turn that entire mountain into a sea of glass. But so I covered Desert Storm. Well, it was Desert Shield first, and then Desert Storm from there. I covered the deployment of the 4th Infantry Division as they left, and when the Scuds started flying, that's when I got the assignments to go to the U.S. Space Command, because the satellite telemetry that they were getting from Iraq was being transferred to the U.S. Space Command there at Peterson Air Force Base, and then back to Israel so that the Patriot missiles could shoot down the Scuds. That was a very interesting story to cover, and that war was basically the highlight of my career. And the reason for that is because after the war was over, there had been a glut of reporters in Colorado Springs due to all the military activity that's there. I mean, that's basically the central defense hub for the United States is Colorado Springs. And so last one hired, first one fired, right? Well, right. I take my magical voice over to MCI and I start calling people while they're eating dinner and selling them telephone service while I'm waiting for a new job in broadcasting to open up.
Oh my goodness! I was just going to ask you if you were in any sort of danger by the exposure that you did, but we'll definitely cover that when we get back from the break. Again, for those of you who didn't hear the beginning of the show, get on that call to action. It's on our Facebook page and on Chemtrails Kill. You're listening to The Truth Tonight. Don't go away. We're back, and this is The Truth Denied. Boy, they said it right. I'm never surrendering. How about you, Bob?
Well, I like that song, but you know what really gets my blood pumping is the one by Muse called Uprising.
Oh, there's quite a few of them out there, man. It's just, and I could appreciate that, that are just, it inspires us all, it gets your blood pumping again, and I think that's what we need to be doing. That's what we do here. You and I have some similarities. You've also got a show, and your show is, basically the same thing, The Truth Denied, what they don't want you to know about, and we're all sort of culminating without having ever met one another when we all started this stuff, and starting to realize that we're all saying the same thing. And then the reality is, and this is what I appreciate about you, Bobby, is that you are. That's why I liked you the first time I met you on the phone, is because you're doing the same thing I'm doing in the essence of, we're not looking to do the fear-mongering stuff. We're looking for the truth. We're looking for the sources, the credible sources, we make those phone calls that people won't make. We call the police. We call, the Navy. We call every the EPA, NOAA, we call these individual government whatevers. I don't even know what to call them anymore. But, to try to get the story, to try to find out what is happening behind the scenes. And back to, some of what you were talking about, you were just rounding off with, your last story that you had covered. And then what happened after that to you? I mean, were you taken out of journalism? Were you capped on that? What happened to you?
Well, you know what I'm doing right at this moment? I'm videotaping F-16s flying over my house.
Right.
I was telling you about that during the break, and they just keep on coming. But yeah, it's a kind of interesting story. I'll try to not to get too sobby about it, but while I was working...
Speak your mind. That's what this is all about, so speak your mind, Bobby.
All right. While I was working at MCI... selling people foam products that they don't need. There was an industrial accident. They had painters in there that tipped over a barrel of toluene diisocyanate. And it's a neurotoxin that's lethal at like 0.02 parts per million, and it permeated the entire building. 38 people went to the hospital that day, including me. And I woke up a couple of days later, crapping blood, and... unable to read, write, or speak properly. And there was no getting around that. I would stand up from the couch and wonder why I had stood up. I mean, everybody's walked into a room and forgotten why, right? Well, every time I turned around, every time I stood up, I couldn't remember why I had done it. Oh, here comes another F-16. Okay. Now... the brain, however, is a miraculous organ. And over the years, I was able to retrain myself. I had, used to love to read Kafka. If anybody's ever read The Metamorphosis, the paragraph and sentence structure is so complex. It's just a joy to read. Well, I couldn't read that anymore. I had a hard time reading comics out of the newspaper. But I did it. I kept on reading more comics and magazines in the doctor's office. Believe me, there were plenty of those. And I was just starting to get my faculties back. I was retraining my brain to think. I was retraining my mouth to speak properly. And, I felt like, I could do something. I still have a slight stuttering problem now, but back then it was a lot more pronounced, and I figured my career in broadcasting is over, so I'll do something else. Well, I've spent the last few years in a medical environment, so I figured, what the heck, I'll be a nurse.
Hello?
You hear me?
Yeah, you just phased out for a second, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I said, I could be a nurse. I've always wanted to help people, and that might be one way for me to serve my fellow man. And I went to nursing school, and I was actually getting good grades. I graduated with a 4.0, and I said, hey, if I can do this, if I can be a nurse, I can be a doctor. I can be a stuttering doctor, but I can be a doctor. So I started going to medical school at University of North Carolina, and on the pre-med track. And I was 6 months away from getting into the actual medical school when I fell off my roof and broke my back. What kind of a person has this kind of luck? So I spent the next 3 years in a wheelchair, and then 8 operations later. Can you hear these F-16s?
No. Sorry, I can't hear them.
Okay, so anyway, I spent the next decade basically learning how to walk again. And, now I can, kind of, for a little while. I'm sorry, Roxy. I'm just not real comfortable talking about that, so I'll just kind of give you the long and the short of it.
Well, Bob, if you want to move on, we can move on. It's all good. Why don't we just move on from that? It's all good. You just talk about whatever you're comfortable with. You talk about what you want to freely talk about. I'm not going to push you to talk about anything that's private or something that's making you nervous right now because of these planes. Now, I want to interject. Take a deep breath. Drink some water. I'm going to interject. Yeah. Take a deep breath. And drink some water, seriously, because I have something that I want to say anyway. In relationship to what Bob's talking about right now with these F-14s flying over, I have to expose something that happened this week, and I did tell one of our team members today on a telephone conversation. I know kind of what Bob's feeling right now. This weekend, for the very first time, people, and you need to listen to this because it's very important. For the very first time, I saw 6 military jets in formation making chemtrails from horizon to horizon. Now, you all know that I've been studying this for over 2.5 years now. I have the photo evidence and the videos to prove it back in the day when everybody thought I was nuts, okay? Now, this is the first time ever that I have seen military jets in formation on a military flight pattern that I'm very well aware of here in Casa Grande, Arizona, doing chemtrails from horizon to horizon. This is very important information. Any of you that are listening right now, if you have any photos, because let me tell you what happened when I went to grab not one camera, but 2 cameras. I grabbed 2 of my cameras that I use all the time. Both cameras failed me. I could not shoot. The camera loaded up and then shut down. Both cameras did that. About a couple hours later, I kept both of the cameras plugged in. A couple hours later, Bobby, I come back out, and there's 3 military jets in formation doing the same thing that the 6 military jets have been doing. And by the way, this was on Saturday, July 7th, in Casa Grande, Arizona, on a military flight pattern. Looked like they were headed towards Davis-Monthan, which is in Tucson, on the border of Mexico, about 40 minutes north of the border of Mexico, about 20 minutes south of Evergreen, Pinal County. Pinal Airport. Now listen to this. I get the camera out. Now I start shooting. It would only shoot the picture of the trail, but as soon as I got to the butt end of the planes, I got whiteout after whiteout on both cameras. Now here's something. You could say, well, maybe it was too bright. The sun was behind me, not in front of me, number one. They were flying in the southeast sky. The sun was behind me in the west, number 2. And number 3 is I've got miles of footage that I've taken, both moving footage and still footage of airplanes in the sky, and never had this whiteout effect happen to me before. So I don't know what happened. I tried to get that on film for everybody. It didn't happen, and I'll watch for it. And as far as these jets flying over, I'm going to ask you, Bobby, these F-14s that are flying over your house right now during the entire show, is this normal?
Well, they're F-16s, actually.
Sorry, F-16s.
And since this is only my second year living up here since they've opened the Combat Readiness Training Center, I would have to say no, really. Because I lived here last summer. People say that, well, it's summertime. That's when the National Guard trains. But
you're listening to the Truth Tonight Talk Radio. We'll be right back. Number to speak with Bobby and myself. Those who call in, this is what I would like. Bobby's got another counterpart to this story with the explosion in Michigan. And after he's done telling this story, what I would like is if you could call in, and I know a few of you wrote in today regarding the explosions in Arizona. I would like you to call in, please. And those of you hearing these explosions that you wrote in, quite a few of you wrote in about explosions that you're hearing all over the joint. If you could call in, that would be great. And again, write the number down, 218-339-8525. So, Bobby, with the explosions, when you told me the story in Michigan, you didn't tell us the other part of that story. So there was an explosion. First of all, can you describe the explosion one more time? Because I think that's really important.
Sure. That's really easy for me to do because as a former Marine, I've heard plenty of artillery. And this felt just like a 155 millimeter shell going off 100 meters away. It was that loud, and it was a sharp bang. It was just an explosion. And, it's that kind of thing that you can feel in your chest. So I don't know how they felt the explosion out further, or, how it felt to them down in Austin, which is good 45 minutes south of us. One woman thought that a car had driven through her house. That is the level of shaking that was felt. And what's strange to me is that in an area where the biggest thing to happen all year is the Brown Trout Festival and the Posen Potato Festival, okay? When those are the biggest news events to happen all year, you'd think that the local media might want to get in on it, especially when you've got a bunch of hungry young reporters. This is the smallest market in the nation, and these guys just got out of journalism school. And if they could get to the bottom of this, they'd be in a $50,000 a year job overnight. But there's not a word about it. And it's not like I'm pulling this stuff out of my butt. The undersheriff himself was talking about it. So, and the chairman of the city council was talking about it. So it happened, but not a single word has been printed. Not a single word has been aired over television or radio.
When did this happen?
It happened on June 6th. This was a couple of weeks after those trees down below in the Kalamazoo area had been snapped off. There were some 60-foot trees that were just snapped off for no reason in Kalamazoo. And there have been explosions reported all over the state, up near Bay City, in Osceola County and Clare County. Yeah, so basically, all the way down at the bottom of Michigan, put your hand out again, and where your wrist is connected to your, where your hand is connected to your arm, you'll find St. Joseph County, Branch County, Calhoun, and Kalamazoo County. They're not too far away from South Bend and Fort Wayne, and that's where this all started. And then it moved up towards Saginaw, and then the last explosion was reported here in Alpena by me.
Was that all in the same day?
No. It occurred over the space of a couple of weeks. It started on May 27th with those trees and explosions down in Kalamazoo.
Okay.
And then it happened a couple of times since then.
Okay.
And the thing that has me perplexed at the moment is that we felt the explosion at a little after 10:30 up here in Alpena. And an hour and 45 minutes later, down below, which is a good 4-hour drive from us, there was a radiation spike. And normal background radiation down there is 5 to 6 counts per minute. But the radiation spike on 3 different networks, it was recorded on 3 different networks, went up to over 7,000 counts per minute. And, it was, quickly blamed on a glitch. Well, I have a hard time believing that 3 separate networks can have the same glitch at the exact same time. Plus, there was a police officer at a lab in Chicago that also reported a radiation spike. It wasn't as high as the ones near South Bend and in Fort Wayne, but it was significant nevertheless. So that's 4 reputable sources that recorded this radiation spike. Now, I can't tie the explosion and the radiation together. I wish I could. If I could, that would be my ticket to a Pulitzer Prize. But I can't. I can't do anything at the moment because nobody's talking except this one particular individual. 2 weeks after I got arrested and published my story, I was approached by a good friend of mine, and he told me that he knew somebody that knew something or that had seen something. So, we talked, and he introduced this fella to me, and he told me the strangest story. Apparently, 12 hours after the explosion, he had seen F-16's like the one that's flying over my head right at this very moment. Listen.
We can't hear it, Alex.
Yeah, I just don't have a good enough microphone. Okay, but anyway, he saw F-16s chasing a UFO out over Lake Huron and engaging it. Okay, I have spent my entire life, well, except for when I was not unable, as a mainstream journalist. I covered Boy Scout spaghetti dinners. I covered city council meetings, murder trials, and a war. Okay, this conspiracy theory thing never even occurred to me. Even my show now doesn't really deal with conspiracy theories as much as political fact. And I just couldn't take this guy's word at face value, even though he had been recommended by a friend that I knew wouldn't steer me wrong. So I went to flightradar24.com, and I looked at the radar tracks for that evening, which was the 7th. Or no, the 6th. And going on into the 7th. And I found 2 different instances of planes coming towards Alpena being held motionless in the air for more than 10 minutes and then disappearing from the radar.
Wow.
You can tell.
I remember when you first told me this story, I just said, say that again, because I couldn't believe, I played devil's advocate and said, well, how do you know the radar was accurate? Maybe they were covering it up on the radar, this and that, the other thing. But now, do you have copies of that at all?
I do. The last show that I uploaded is called "The Truth Is Viral." Was an interview with a fellow by the name of Drake that has been talking about this green light. He's associated loosely with David Wilcock and Benjamin Fulford, and they've got this idea that there's going to be some kind of cavalry coming in to save us. Well, I've got news for everybody. There is no cavalry. You're going to have.
What do you think about Drake?
I think that
I just put you on the spot, didn't I?
You sure did.
Sorry about that. You don't have to answer the question.
Okay.
I'll tell you what I think about him.
I'm going to be honest. I think he's full of it.
Okay.
Because the powers that be, or anybody that's going to arrest somebody, they're not going to announce their plans ahead of time. They're just going to do it. I mean, how often have you watched an episode of Cops and the cops call them up an hour ahead of time? Well, we're going to be raiding your house in about an hour. No, that just doesn't happen. Okay, so as much as it hates, I don't like to say anything negative about anybody.
I know. So let's go back to this. So the interview you did about this sighting and then the F-16s on radar, then off radar, is with Drake.
Yeah, it started out that way, and I wanted to bring it in.
He knows something about it?
I wanted to bring that into the conversation because he claims that ETs are helping, reclaim our planet from the cabal of bankers and whatnot that have really taken it over. Okay, that part is not a joke. He's not spreading misinformation there. This planet is under a satanically inspired one world government. It's not in the open now. You don't have to have your chip yet, but it's coming, and it's coming real soon. So he takes what's really happening and he adds his own twist for it. Why he does this, I don't know. I deal in facts, which is why I went to get these radar tracks. I had to see for myself exactly what was going on over Lake Huron during that period of time. So, since he's been saying that ETs are involved in this thing, I asked him, could the explosion and these missing aircraft have been, part of this attack, this green light of yours? And he says, well, there's some things I can't answer. That was his answer to just about every question that I asked.
Well, and I can dig. I can dig it, Bob. Let me tell you. It's split down the middle. I was just having a conversation with somebody again today about this very thing. We've got people who believe that the underground explosions that are happening here in Arizona, and believe me, they're underground, they're huge, they're a big boom, they shake the house. They're not sonic booms. We have proof of that. as well, the decision is split right down the middle. There are many people who actually are trying to tell us that these explosions under the ground are the ETs helping us out and destroying all the underground bases. And then, I go with strict logic. Now, Now, some of these people I actually have known for quite a long time who actually are in this belief system. So I don't want to put anybody down. I personally don't subscribe to that. I find things that are much more honest based in logic. And I don't care what we're going through as an evolution on this planet. Things still come back to logistics, logical thinking. And I told you what I think it is. I told you, I shared with you, and I don't know, I might share it today, I might not, but I did share with you what I think the explosions are over here. And hopefully we've got a few people that have been reporting these in Casa Grande, Arizona, going to call. I know they're listening to this show. I'm not sure whether they're not dialing in, and I wish they would, 218-339-8525. But the ET connection, as far as what you're describing, again, logic. You've got radar, you've got these F-16s, they're in, they're out, they disappear, and what happened to the craft that they were chasing as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to put what you can actually prove with your own individual belief system. God, by definition, is an extraterrestrial. I did an interview with Chuck Missler not too long ago. A lot of people might know who he is. And for those who don't, he owned an aerospace company for many years and was privileged to high-tech and highly classified information. And now he's spreading God's word on YouTube. And basically to anybody that'll listen. And he's a very smart man. He's got a background in mathematics and science. We approach the subject pretty much the same. You can't, just because you have faith in God and faith in science, the two are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they complement each other, if you really think about it. But Chuck's idea, something that makes a lot of sense to me, if you listen to him explain it, is that ETs are extra-dimensional. They're not extraterrestrial in the sense that they don't fly from one planet to another. They come into our dimension and appear, and this explains why they can seemingly defy the laws of physics or appear and disappear at will, because they're not fully in our dimension. And his explanation of that is really good. And for people that like to mix their science and their apocalyptic scenarios, Chuck Missler's a really good guy to watch. And now
this interview, this interview that you did do, that's on what website?
Well, my website, The Truth is Viral, is at www.bobpowell.blogspot.com. That's my website. I've got a YouTube channel. It's called Old Core BLT13. Yeah, I started my
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's BLT13 was Battalion Landing Team, 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines. But I started that YouTube channel just as a goof, as a way of my therapy. I started doing my own little news shows. Sure. And I never thought about making a penny off of it. I still don't, because being technically disabled, if I lose the Medicare and Medicaid that I've got, then I lose the ability to pay for over $2,000 a month of medication that's keeping me alive. So any money that I get for my show, from advertising or whatnot, goes to produce the show. I have to be able to show the IRS at the end of the year, or the Social Security Administration, that I didn't make any money, because I'm basically not allowed to. And I that's a story for another show. But I think that's stupid. If somebody has the ability to contribute, why make them choose between, okay, if you can work, and while we pay for your medicine, you can pay taxes and contribute to society. Or you can sit on your couch and collect Social Security disability, and we'll pay for your medicine. You don't have to do a damn thing. You don't have to contribute to nothing.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense to me, but that's the way it is. But Yeah, getting back to this, these UFOs, I don't know really what to make of it. I know that there is a force outside of what we can experience every single day. And when we come back from the break, I'd like to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's definitely do that. You know, we're speaking with Bob Powell. He's a reporter and a journalist. And, you know, he's spilling it here. So keep tuned in here. You're listening to the Truth Tonight Talk Radio. I'm Roxy Lopez, and we'll be right back. We're back, and for those of you who are just joining us, we're covering quite a bit here with these explosions that have been reported all over the country. Now, Bobby, you know this. I spoke with Linda Morton Howe, who is covering this right now. She's covered 25 or 26 states with these reports and 4 provinces of Canada. And so she called to get my report because we have 2 reports that entail 7 blasts. And for those of you who want to read that, just go to thetruthtoday.com and go ahead and look at it. You know, there's dates, times, and occurrences, what happened, what it sounded like, everything's there. So if any of you are having the same stuff happen to you, you might be able to recognize that you know, you're not alone. There aren't explanations for it. In my report, I cover that I went to the police department first. I know people in the police department. I know people at the city. I hold a chairman position here at the city. And I addressed it. And I've gone to, you know, besides the law enforcement, to the military. I've gone to Pinal Air Park, spoke with a man named Wally Mike. That's all in my report. I went to we have 4 large mines here. The mines were, when I spoke with their upper management, were surprised that I was even asking them, because there's a law against explosions in the middle of the night. And all of these occurred in the middle of the night from 5 minutes till noon, 5 minutes to midnight, to the latest being 5:30 a.m. Most of them are occurring when people are in bed, but it's waking people up. It's waking dogs up, animals up, cats up, all the rest of it. And the police department, by the 3rd time it happened in Casa Grande, were getting a slew of calls. I think most people wrote it off to the first time it happened, but by the 2nd and 3rd time, they were getting more and more calls. And I was told by the police department that they would investigate it on one of the calls that I made, and they said that for me to call back in an hour. I called back in an hour, and they shut me down. Dispatch said, just go back to bed. It was 3:30 in the morning, and they just said, and I said, well, you said you were going to investigate it. What happened? I spoke to policemen straight up, face to face about this, and when I asked them the question, they looked down at the ground. They look at, when I speak to them face to face. Every opportunity when I see policemen, I ask them about this. They are aware of it. Policemen made the reports. I spoke to one of the top people that work at the Casa Grande Police Department on Val Vista, and he actually said at first that he didn't know about it until a bunch of people overheard the conversation we were having on the phone at that time, and started, you know, chiming in that they did hear it and they had been hearing them. So we've got a lot of conflict of information and no information regarding what it could possibly be. I personally think that it is some facet of the military doing it. I do not think it's ETs blowing up underground bases. I do not subscribe to that. There's too much information. We see too many military jets that are dropping those, you know, flares, and then we're correlating the flares with the explosion coming later. A few hours later, we're correlating a lot of evidence. We're seeing a lot of stuff in our sky. We also are seeing a lot of military traffic in our sky. The municipal airport that is across the street from our studio here is loaded with military now. They moved in. We've got the National Guard there. We don't know why. They weren't there, a year ago. They're training there. They're doing strategic forces. We've got Homeland Security placed right in the middle between Florence and Casa Grande, right in the middle of the desert with sniper booths all up and down the highway there. We've got cameras showing up everywhere. We've got drone activity. I'm logged into an aircraft, private people who own private aircraft. It's a pilot's log. I'm logged into that, and I'm seeing pilots talking about the drones encroaching on their personal space now. A drone did actually hit one of the pilots. We've got a lot of action going on down here, and we have 2 months ago an air show that was down at Davis-Monthan. I was going to attend it. Anyway, at the end of the day, what happened is they had a sonic boom that blew out the windows of 300 businesses and residents down there. I don't know the end of that story. I can't get any information about it, but I will tell you this, that most of these agencies that I contacted pointed me down at Davis-Monthan, and I'm really glad that I was in Casa Grande the day that they had this huge sonic boom down in Tucson, which is about an hour and a half south of me. Because we didn't hear a thing up here, so that just blew that thing right out of the water, that theory that it's a sonic boom. It's not a sonic boom. It just as you described, Bobby, it comes from under the ground. As loud as this sounds, and it sounds like something ran into your home. That's what it sounds like a truck ran into the house. The house shakes that violently for just a second. There's no aftermath. There's no sirens that come after it. There's no fire departments that come out after it. There's no smell. There's no tangible evidence that it even happened 1 second after it happens. It shoots up a wave inside of your body, whether you're sitting on the couch in bed or standing on the floor. It doesn't blow out our windows up here. I don't know what it is. I have no idea what it is at this point, but we are getting the reports, and the only way that we can continue to substantiate that it's occurring is by these reports that continue to come in. So I want to thank the public for bringing their reports forward. And for those of you who had written into the show and wanted to call in the show to continue on this reporting, please do. I would love it if you called in. I don't know if you decided not to call in, but you did send me emails that you were going to call in. And again, the number is 218-339-8525 if you want to come in. So, are you experiencing, I guess why I'm elaborating about this, again, if you want to read the stories that we've got in the reports, these are accurate reports, dates, times, to the moment, to the second. Just go to thetruth.denied.com. There's a little Google search engine on there that's pre-tabbed to The Truth Denied. Just put in Arizona explosions and you'll get up the stories. It's very easy to follow. Are you experiencing the same thing, Bobby, with your explosions there?
Yeah, actually we are. And, like you said, it feels like it's coming from underground. And I've had a couple of people, tell me that during World War II, Alpena had a secret submarine base under it. I'm currently pursuing that line of reasoning, but I don't hold out much hope because they have dive tours around here that have glass bottom boats, and if anybody was sneaking, submarines into this area, then I think that we'd know. Besides the fact that it would have to come through all the locks in the St. Lawrence Seaway, it would be seen.
Right.
So, there's a lot of strangeness associated with this story. A lot of things that I can't put my finger on, and the reason why is because of Nina Baranski. Nina Baranski was my first boss, and during that Todd Neely story, the one that I was telling you about earlier, where the boy was freed and the district attorney was jailed, she told me, Bobby, if you don't come to me with 2 sources of information, it's not going to get printed. And that's the way I've always conducted myself as a journalist. I have to find a fact before I will publish it.
I hear you.
I had the UFO angle for almost over a week, almost 2 weeks before I got the radar tracks to prove that there was something. Now I can't say what it was, but there was something that happened in the early evening or late.
Hello?
Everybody can go to flightradar24.com and see it for themselves. And I've also uploaded the videos that I captured from that site on my Old Core BLT13 YouTube page and incorporated them into that video interview that I did with Drake. All that information can be found on bobpowell.blogspot.com. From the beginning of this story, back on June 6th, I've done 6 videos on this, 6 episodes since, and anybody that wants to get caught up on the explosions in Michigan and the aftermath, it's not something that you can see. But
right, you're right. You're right, and there's nothing that's been publicized locally here either. That's a whole nother story. There's nothing that's been publicized. That's why we're getting the calls and the emails, because we're the only story out there. Now we do have somebody who's on hold, and so why don't we go ahead and bring them on? Is that all right with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So caller from the 804 area code. Caller, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you? Hi, Roxy.
Hi,
how you doing?
Ya?
I just have to get away from my laptop because it's talking. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. We
Hello?
can hear you just
Okay.
fine.
I just wanted to contribute my 2 cents from what I have felt. I don't live in that area, but when I was living in New York, and I'm really trying very hard to think what year this was, I felt the ground just open up like that. And I called the police about it. Nobody knew anything. It felt like an earthquake. But, I've heard from, different people, I think John Lear and different people, that there's, that underground railroad which goes, I believe it just opens up the earth. It has some way, technology we don't know about. But in September, I think it was, of 2011, there was the supposed earthquake here, which a lot of people, there was one here in Virginia and by Louisa County, and there was one in Colorado, which I don't know if this is true or not, but, they said it was bombing the entrances to these train systems or bombing underground bases. Are you there?
Yes. Yes.
And what it felt like, I've never experienced an earthquake before, what it felt like was everything shaking, just everything shaking. And because I'm from New York, I thought it was a plane that was going to land on the house. But that's what it felt like. But as you were talking, what was running through my mind is so much how there's the non-intervention thing, and yet these ETs or interdimensionals or whatever they are, is the story that they've signed agreements with the governments, but they're really here illegally. So there's all this stuff of non-disclosure. So it's just a catch-22 where, because they're really here illegally as far as the whole intergalactic community, they know they're committing a crime being here, so everyone is forced into non-disclosure. And, that's just what I was picking up psychically about.
Okay.
The whole situation.
And you're not alone, caller. There are a lot of people. And, Bobby, what do you have to say about what she's saying?
I think she's absolutely right. They are here illegally because, according to Chuck Missler and many others, these ETs or interdimensionals, however you want to speak to them, are
or Anunnaki or reptilian, whatever the heck
right.
they are.
They're demonic. They're demonic in nature,
and they do the mind control and all these illegal, immoral, unjust things.
Well, let me tell you one thing: if you're experiencing mind control, or somebody that is, all you have to do is mention the name of Jesus Christ, and they're gone. That's been reported in many UFO abduction type scenarios, when people feel that they're getting abducted by an extraterrestrial. If they say, "In the name of Jesus Christ, be gone," then that episode stops.
my experience.
Well, and I think that would be a matter of opinion as far as that goes, because I've heard many, many different ways of challenging that as well, and I can appreciate what you're saying. And caller, I can appreciate what you're saying as well. By the way, you don't remember the year that this happened in New York, but I'm going to ask you.
I want to say like maybe 85, maybe in the 90s. It was definitely
when it
before.
Happened, did you ever hear anything about it? Was there any reporting done on it?
Not a thing. But, that was before Internet. That was before all this stuff. But I just want to mention one thing about the ET stuff, is that I had an ET thing as late as 2007 where I remembered it just as a dream. And it's very interdimensional because I don't know if it's done because you go into such fright or because they do it purposely, that, it is interdimensional. But things from the abduction came through, and, then there were other ET experiences where I didn't have the memory, but I had everything up to it, and psychic said, yeah, it was an ET thing. So I've had both things, and what happens is that, for whatever reason, the psyche protects you, you don't remember, and then you remember afterwards.
Right, and I've heard a lot of things like sleep paralysis that occur, and a number of other things. So
they open up time portals too, all sorts of things.
My goodness. Yeah. Well, I thank you very much, and Bobby thanks you for, having the courage to call in the show.
And thank you, Roxy.
And thanks for your report. You're very welcome. Thanks so much. You take care now. Well, we've got some other callers that are on hold, and it looks like we're going to be going right into a break here. So I'm going to have to ask the callers that are on hold, just hang in there, because we'll be right back, and we'll be back for the last 15 minutes of the show. Take care. We're live on the air with Bob Powell. Website is bobpowell.blogspot.com. And boy, this show just flew by. I wish there's so much more that I want to know. So we'll just have to have you back again. And we do have some callers. Maybe they waited to see all of what you were going to explain or whatever. But we'll try to get to those callers. And let's see if we can bring somebody on board here. 715 area code. Welcome, caller, to the Truth Tonight Talk Radio. What can we do for you?
Hi, Roxy. Hey, this is Bob up in Wisconsin. Yeah, you guys were talking about the booms and the bangs and the cracks and everything that are happening out in Arizona and over here in Michigan, too, near us.
Yes.
And I heard some stuff about that couple right after it happened. I was on the YouTube channel, and there were guys that were posting videos and stuff about it. And here just not too long ago, it was like about a week or so ago, I was just surfing the web, and I found somebody who posted something, and they had done a lot of mapping and put two and two together, and they said that, okay, there's like 2 pentagrams based on the land in the United States, and somewhere there is a tunnel that is supposedly being built or has been built. It's a transportation tunnel by the elite that supposedly runs from Arizona all the way down through to the Mexican border, and then some. And there's also supposed to be another one that runs out of Chicago and along that direction. And I'm just wondering if them might be tied into what all this booming and banging is on.
Well, absolutely. Now, real quick question, and then we'll give this to Bob. I've got a quick question for Bob in Wisconsin. The caller, did you hear any of this explosions at all?
I haven't heard any, but we did have some down in Clintonville area, which is just south of here.
Yes, you did. Have you spoken to anybody?
That's kind of why I'm wondering, on how much of this could be actually going on. I mean, one guy's put it together and stated this, and he's drawn it all out. And I mean, he must be some sort of a brain anyway, right, to come up with all this, and then all this stuff that I'm hearing. And he's put this together a few years ago, according to what I read. And now we're hearing all these booms and bangs in the general area of where he's put all this together, located it on the maps.
Sure. That's what Linda Morton Howell's doing too. She's mapping this stuff out, trying to make sense of all of it, you know. But Bob, Powell, what do you think?
Well, as far as the underground tunnels, I think that they're probably 100% chance that they do exist, because we know that DUMBs exist, the deep underground military bases. And if I was a military planner, I would want some type of transportation system from one to the other. So that just makes common sense.
Yeah, definitely. And caller, do you know about these DUMBs?
I've heard, I know about the salt mines and all that stuff that I've read about over the years and all that, where the military has great, big, humongous cathedrals underneath the ground in these salt mines and shit out there, and they got them in Illinois. They got mines down in Illinois. They got places farther west. The big salt mines down that way and stuff. And when you start putting all this stuff together, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, well, there's an entire city underneath Denver International Airport, and that's where Who would you think might be the least likely person to buy up property near Denver International Airport? Would you believe that Queen Elizabeth owns property in Denver International Airport? Why? What's she going to do there? Is Denver a big vacation spot for her, especially when her property is like out in the middle of nowhere? It's not even up in the mountains or anything. It's just prairie, desert. What is the Queen of England doing owning property next to Denver International Airport? It doesn't make any sense to me. But the fact is that she does. And the fact is that there is a large facility underneath Denver International Airport. And there is also a tunnel system connecting Denver International Airport with Colorado Springs and NORAD. So, yeah, I absolutely believe that there are tunnels. I wanted to address the Clintonville booms real quick. I talked with Jim Birkeland. He's the U.S. Geological Survey scientist that predicted the World Series earthquake in one of my recent shows. It was the 188-day God Code was the title of it. And he seems to think that the Clintonville booms were caused by fracking. And, that's another mess that we're being herded into, because you can't just inject chemicals in whatever else that they're injecting into our water table and not expect there to be consequences on the population that lives off of those aquifers. And we see BP and all these other energy companies on our television sets every night. A woman's holding a baby and says, "Oh, this free energy is going to be so good for me and my baby." Well, your baby is going to be drinking that water that they're polluting in about 5 years. So,
yeah. True. And, as far as what the caller is talking about as well, the mapping out like this, thanks for calling us and letting us know that, because, that's something that we're aware of as well. And there is something to it. And, I don't think any of us would be having our radio shows anymore if there was no more secrecy. See, if the government or the military or who's ever behind most of this kind of, nonsense was just upfront about it, I don't think we'd all be out of quote unquote business, so to speak, because we wouldn't have to try to back engineer this junk. And that's what we're having to do as a population. I do know about the story out of Wisconsin that you're talking about as well, Bob, because that was pretty big stuff. Yet there's nothing in mainstream media about it that I can find that's anything of any substance.
No,
yeah, it was basically local.
That's right.
Around here,
that's right.
Around here, we had it on the local channels. Never seen anything above that.
Right. Right. And what was your local channel when they spoke about it? Were they sort of like, oh, there was, people reported a boom and then it just went away? I mean, did they just not elaborate whatsoever?
Yeah, pretty much 2 days. 2 days we heard about it, and that was it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And no answers, and yeah, and see, here in Arizona, I don't know about you, Bob Powell, out where you're at, but in Michigan, but here in Arizona, there's been not a peep on local news, local journalism, local tabloids, or mainstream. Nothing. Zero.
Nope, nothing
Yeah,
here.
I didn't hear anything about the Michigan one until I was on the internet and actually discovered that through YouTube.
Right.
So,
And we got to thank our YouTubers,
it,
by the way. I got to give a shout out to the YouTubers because, man, you guys do such a great job over there with passing on information. And, you know, the public's getting very discerning about this. They know the hoax from the reality, and it's getting good. Where the public is getting very educated, and I really appreciate that. And, Bob, do you have anything else you wanted to contribute?
Actually,
no, not Bob Powell. I'm sorry, Bob from Wisconsin, the caller.
No, not actually at the moment. It's just that I'm hoping the same thing, that everybody starts waking up. Even people that I talk to, you know, they're like, you're full of it, this and all that, you know, and it's like, okay, wait till the bumper hits you right in the ass before you go down then.
I do know the feeling, and Bob Powell and I were just talking about that on the break, that, you know, a lot of people just are completely unaware. But I appreciate your call, and please continue to listen Mondays and Fridays, 7 to 9 Central. Okay, Bob?
All right. Thank you, Roxy, and you guys have a great evening.
Thank you. You do the same. And that's, you know, there it is again, you know, Bob. Isn't that funny? Our caller named Bob.
Yeah. He's got a great name.
He's got a great name, doesn't he? I was just going to say that. You stole my thunder, dear. But the idea here is that, you know, there you've got, you know, he calls in and really spells it out. You know, he looks on YouTube, he looks for the stories, and he's in there. He sounds like a legitimate individual who calls in, and this is right down the middle that we're dealing with, Bob. We're dealing with people who are very awake and very clear and very logical, and then people who don't even know that any of this stuff exists.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to do with my show. You know, basically, I'm just doing it in my spare time, and I'm trying to wake people up to the fact that it's really happening. There is something happening. I don't know if, you know, there are a lot of it.
Hello.
Can you hear
Bob?
me?
Oh, all of a sudden you just went out. I don't know what happened to you, but you're back.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, good. I'm not a Bible beater. Okay.
Great. Hey, you know what?
In Christ, but my show is politics, and I use it to show what's happening. And we're in for a sea change. It's coming, and you need to pay attention. People need to wake up and stop listening to Jersey Shore and American Idol.
Well, Bob, we're out of time. We're just short out of time right now. Everybody, Bob Powell, thank you for joining us, bobpowell.blogspot.com. We'll put a video out about this show. Bob, we just appreciate you so much. Thanks for being here on the show, and we'll definitely have you back another time, okay?
Roxy, it was my pleasure, sweetheart. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And we're the Truth Denied Talk Radio. I'm Roxy Lopez, your host, Monday through Friday. Actually, Monday and Friday. It probably will be Monday through Friday at some point. Stay tuned for Sean David Morton. He rocks. Have a great week, people.
No rules. No rules. No taboo topics. No taboo topics. No fear of doom. No fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
And look at the executive summary if you like, or you can call Rosalind at 707-485-7520, or you can write her at info@californiaskywatch.com, and I would put in the subject line on that Navy, U.S. Navy, so that Rosalind will go directly to that, because Rosalind does get a lot of mail, as we all do. Again, you want to stop this. 11.7 million marine mammals and habitats, life forms will be are in danger at this point. And this is the real deal, like Rosalind just said. Rosalind, this is live. This is happening. What is going on here? How are they able to do these terrible things? I don't understand.
Well, the Navy has taken the position that they don't have to protect most of our biologically sensitive areas, marine reserves, national marine sanctuaries, and that they conduct war practice everywhere. They have decided that instead of having, in other words, firing duds that don't, have these shock and awe explosions, they have decided that they need to do live fire testing everywhere. In other words, the Marianas Islands, the Hawaiian Islands, the Gulf of Mexico, all along the entire eastern seaboard, in Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, coastal areas, on land areas. They're going to have drones carrying weapons, which could accidentally fall on the ground, because Senator Levin has said that we're buying aircraft parts from China, and they're defective. 2 weeks ago, he announced this on the floor of the Senate. So we're in grave peril from these exercises, and also there's no need for the Navy to destroy every ocean area all around the continental United States and in the island areas where they're practicing now, and to expand this testing. There just is no reason for this.
Right. And
this
what's
is
with
hundreds? I'm talking about every year. Hundreds of 5,000-pound bomb blasts will occur, for example, in Northern California, Oregon, and Washington area along the coastal region. And so you've got 1,000-pound bombs, 5,000-pound bombs, missile exercises. In other words, below the surface blast, above the surface blast, and the Navy is relying on a mitigation measure straight out of the 17th century of Alaska. This is a huge expansion. And in Southern California, they're going to expand the range for warfare testing all the way from Southern California down to the Mexican border, all the way across to the Hawaiian Islands. And there will be expansions in the Marianas Islands, also near Guam as well. All of this will affect marine mammals with sonar and these bomb blasts, 5,000-pound bombs, 1,000-pound bombs, toxic chemicals they can now dump overboard in many regions. We have a chance to demand U.S. Congressional Senate hearings, and the toll-free number to call your senator and or your U.S. House member is 866-220-0044. This is a toll-free number, 866-220-0044. It's a toll-free number. You can ask to speak to any congressman or senator, because we desperately need U.S. Senate hearings to protect our national marine sanctuaries and our marine reserves, which in many areas the U.S. Navy is refusing to do. Now, don't be confused by the definition of take. It's defined under the Endangered Species Act as to harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, capture, or collect or attempt to engage in any such conduct. And when they're bombing, when they're using sonar and they're bombing during the blue whale, the gray whale migrations, the right whale habitat is near one of their warfare testing areas with sonar and other types of weapon systems, it's really important that everyone make a public comment before midnight, July 10th, 2010. And if you need to have the Navy website, you can go to my website, and it's agriculturedefensecoalition.org, and you can click on the U.S. Navy section. You'll find my letter there with the links, and you can file your public comments there, and you can also send copies to your elected officials of those public comments. We need to have a massive amount of people calling and working to stop this tremendous expansion of warfare testing. And this is live fire testing, everyone. This is not the Pacific Ocean, and there's a public comment for the Atlantic Ocean. The U.S. Navy has decided that they are going to expand their 5-year warfare testing ranges, some smaller ones, into some massive size warfare ranges. This includes missile exercises, bomb blasts, sonar use, new weapon systems testing, drone experiments and testing. All of this is going to be engaged in over land areas and also in the Atlantic and the Pacific and the Gulf of Mexico. 11.7 million marine mammals and fish and our aquatic habitat of our oceans are in danger from these Navy weapon systems testing. U.S. Senators Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer, Senator, in other words, 7 other senators, Markley of Oregon, Wyden of Oregon, and others, sent a letter stating the following. In many regions, the Navy plans to increase the number of its exercises or expand the areas in which they may occur, and virtually every coastal state will be affected. Some exercises may occur in the nation's most biologically sensitive marine habitats, including national marine sanctuaries and breeding habitats, not only for the North Atlantic right whale, but for migrating whales in all ocean areas. That's the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Gulf of Mexico. In addition, and I quote, the Navy anticipates more than 2.3 million takes, significant disruptions in marine mammal foraging, breeding, and other essential behaviors per year, or 11.7 million takes over the course of a 5-year permit. Now, what's staggering about the Atlantic seaboard range expansion is that this expansion will cover the areas all the way from Maine, down the entire Atlantic seaboard, all the way to Florida, and across the Gulf of Mexico, including shoreline and land areas. In addition, there's a huge expansion which is going to take a range now in operation from Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, and they're going to expand this range to include the Gulf Benign with bombs that don't go off. This is real weapons, real bombs, new weapon systems, and this is really important that everyone in the next 2 days start really contacting your elected officials, ask for congressional hearings, call your state governor, especially if you live in coastal states or not, and begin to say that we need to preserve our oceans and that in the name of war, the Navy should not be allowed to destroy our ocean environment for war practice.
This is astounding. This is alarming. Rosalind, thank you so much for giving us the heads up. I mean, my goodness. So I just posted this, I tweeted it, put it on Facebook. I'm asking the general public here to please, this is very important. The deadline is tomorrow, Tuesday, the 10th at midnight. Don't wait until tomorrow. Do it now. Please do it now. The number is toll free, 866-220-0044. You can speak, as Rosalind has just told us, to our Congress, to senators, anybody. When people call in, they're going to want to know this. What do they say? What are they against right now? What are they going to say? Is there a law? Is there what is the phrase that people can use, Rosalind?
Okay, the Navy has a draft environmental impact statement online on their respective websites for both the Atlantic and the Pacific. And you can find them. The quickest way to find them is on my website by clicking on the U.S. Navy.
Okay.
And it's agriculturedefensecoalition.org. They can read at least the executive summary, and they can look at the maps so they know the extent of these ranges and how much the Navy wants to expand. They can call me at 707-485-7520 for more information, or they can email at info@californiaskywatch.com. And what they should say is that they want U.S. congressional hearings to protect our national marine sanctuaries, our marine reserves, our biologically sensitive areas, and 11.7 million marine mammals from sonar, weapons testing, and bomb blasts.
Okay. That pretty much spells it out, and people can just write this down. And again, just go to Rosalind's website if you want to look at it, agriculturedefensecoalition.org. Go under U.S. Navy. And
the American Freedom Radio Network proudly presents, live from Phoenix, Arizona, The Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here for topics you won't hear on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, Morgellons disease, and much more. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
it is a steamy Monday here, live from Phoenix, Arizona, I got to tell you. 110 degrees. I think they're trying to fry us. Well, for those of you who are interested in a couple of really, really big items that we've all had on the agenda for a while, one of them is we have a very special report from Rosalind Peterson, and she's going to be on in 2 seconds to give that report and call to action and an announcement. I know a lot of you have been writing in about this 5-year Navy program that is not cool, not okay, not right. And we don't like seeing the beautiful mammals of the ocean, such as the whales and the, dolphin and a number of other species pouring up onto the beach, or beaching themselves, I should say. There's a reason why those animals beach themselves, by the way. So Rosalind will be with us in just a second, and of course our guest following that will be reporter and journalist Bobby Powell. Yes, we're going to be addressing these explosions across the United States and in Canada. But Bobby has some special reports about that as well, and we'll be bringing him on shortly. But for now, I just want to really get right to it. Appreciate the listeners, appreciate your emails and your support. Absolutely fabulous. We just don't have any more that we can say than that. Thank you for joining us. Rosalind Peterson, are you with us?
Yes, I am. And hello, and thank you for having me on your show about this critical issue with the U.S. Navy.
You are so very welcome. Just go ahead and spin it off, whatever you need. We back it up and get it out there for you, Rosalind, of course. Yes, of course.
What I want to tell everyone is that the U.S. Navy has 2 public comment periods which expire at midnight tomorrow. One is for